Hi everyone, I'm Rabina.
And I'm Layla.
Welcome back to our channel, Nutrition Unpacked,
where we try diets so you don't have to.
Today we're going to talk about the food industry trying to make us fat.
So we've been doing the standard American diet now for coming up on a week, and we're going to be doing it for 10 days total. During this time, we're going to be exploring what is the standard American diet, how it makes us feel, and how we really got to where we are.
So you missed our last video where we dive all into the standard American diet, what it is, and possible health outcomes. Check that out first.
In today's video, we are going to be tackling how food industries have formulated this food to kind of lead to the obesity epidemic.
I mean, I think this is probably no surprise to anyone, but rates of obesity has gone up in recent decades. We see this globally. For example, in the US, between 2000 and 2020, rates of obesity went from 30.5% to 41.9%. We see similar trends in Canada. Between 2005 and 2018 went from 22% to 27%.
People often ask, what is causing this? People's genetics don't tend to change in such a short period of time, so that's only left us with environment. And when we talk about things like obesity, typically there's two major things that we talk about. It is diet and food, and then also activities, so things like exercise and sedentary behavior. And because this is a nutrition channel and we're changing our diet, we're going to be talking about the food aspect. And so what exactly has happened to our food system to lead us to where we are?
Obesity Canada defines obesity as a progressive and chronic disease that is characterized by excess fat accumulation that can impair our health. Now, just to be clear, so obviously the way we're defining obesity, we're talking about the amount of fat on a person's body, whereas all of the statistics and stuff do tend to be using BMI or body mass index to determine whether someone's categorized as obese or not. This is based purely on the fact that calculating BMI is just super cheap, super easy. All you need is height and weight. Especially when you're looking at a population level, it can be used, I think, rather effectively as a proxy measure of obesity. BMI does have a lot of limitations, and when it's being used on an individual level as a diagnostic tool, lots and lots of limitations and issues. Again, no surprise to anyone, diet plays a huge role in body weight. We see
What?
Oh my god, you scared me.
This whole time?
Lots and lots of evidence to prove this. Observational studies, experimental trials. When people manipulate their diet or their food intake, we can see changes in weight. Even on an observational level, we see that different dietary patterns or energy intakes are associated with different weight outcomes.
Generally, we can look at the trends here. Diets that are high in whole grains, fruits and vegetables, and nuts tend to be associated with weight loss over time. And now you scared me. Those kind of diets tend to be associated with weight loss over time or lower body weights in general. But then when we look at things like the refined grains, processed meats, red meats, and added fats, those are typically associated with increases in body weight over time.
I think we all want to always find out what is the actual issue. What is the one ingredient or compound? Is it sugar? Is it fat? What is it that's actually leading to maybe these changes in weight that we're seeing? When you think about a sugar-sweetened beverage, processed meat. On the surface, doesn't seem like they have a whole lot in common. But if you dig a little deeper, there are two variables that might be at play here: palatability and satiety.
And that's where the food industry comes in. Prior to a few decades ago, food kind of just came as it was. There was minimal processing. You might have wheat that was processed to get rid of the bran, to make it a little bit more palatable, but really we weren't seeing huge amounts of changes to our food. But in recent years, we have seen that our food system has changed quite a bit.
In our bodies, we naturally have an entire system of hormones and other mechanisms that are there to kind of drive us to eat and drive us to stop eating. For example, hormones like ghrelin that are there to tell us when we're hungry. We have hormones like leptin that are there to tell us that we're full. And these natural mechanisms are at play with a variety of different things that are both intrinsic variables or extrinsic variables, and they are kind of interacting with the environment, including the types of foods that we're eating. First, let's talk about the influence of palatability, which can be considered an extrinsic variable that might be affecting how much we actually end up eating. So when we talk about palatability, I mentioned, sugar-sweetened beverage versus a processed meat. It doesn't necessarily seem like there's a lot of compounds or variables between them that would link them or make them similar. But the common thread between them is that they both tend to be quite palatable?
When we talk about palatability, that is describing all of the sensory components of a food that makes it good. So that's things like taste, smell, texture, mouthfeel. And you know what's crazy is that food companies who make the foods for us to eat have whole teams that like go in and adjust the texture just a little bit to make it a little bit tastier, and adjust the size of the salt crystals to make them dissolve on your tongue at exactly the perfect rate so that they are as palatable or as just delicious as possible.
How palatable a food or beverage is has a significant impact on your willingness to eat it at all, and then also how much you end up eating. I think this is something that we all intuitively know. Often, people make jokes about how,
there's always room for dessert.
generally speaking, when something tastes really good, we're a lot more willing to eat it, even if we're not necessarily hungry.
When we look at the standard American diet, as we talked about last week, about 30% of calories come from restaurant meals, 50% of calories come from ultra-processed foods. And these kind of groups of foods have groups of people who directly benefit from you liking them more. So that means that a lot of times they have scientists, they have expert panels, they have consumer testing tests to make things as palatable as possible, which is kind of in a way hijacking your system that tells you how much and when to eat. Your body's like, ooh, I really like this, I want more.
There's some magical combination of fat, sugar, and salt that seems to really optimize that palatability. This is where I don't think I did the standard American diet properly, because I didn't necessarily enjoy the foods that I had happened to pick. But I do think it was my fault. I went to get a frozen meal. By the time I ended up in the aisle there, I forgot what the larger goal was, and I went into my natural element and was just like, oh, what has protein? What has fiber and vegetables? I picked this up from Sobeys, and to be honest, I don't know if I'm doing this whole standard American diet properly, because this actually seems like a really good frozen meal. It's mostly vegetables, cooked chicken. I'm hoping this actually will be filling. 20 grams of protein is pretty good.
Pretend you're not a dietitian. I didn't do that.
This is probably no surprise to anyone, but now that I've actually opened it up, it looks like every other sad frozen dinner. I do have my trusty dusty sriracha hot sauce, so hot. It actually does taste good. The texture is not awesome, but it actually does taste really good. It's quite flavorful.
I had a frozen fried rice dinner.
I did get something and I'm really excited to try it. It is this frozen dinner, Compliments brand chicken fried rice, which I am making for lunch today. Okay guys, I'm a few bites in and honestly, it's pretty good. I actually really like this. And I will say, it took less time than it normally takes me to assemble a lunch that I had previously made. So I have a little rice grain on my sleeve here. But yeah, honestly, 10 out of 10. I actually would eat this again. It's pretty good. Not exactly, gourmet, but definitely not bad by any stretch of the imagination, and so fast.
I did get the hamburger helper because I was excited to try it.
So I've been able, through this challenge, to fulfill my lifelong dream of trying hamburger helper. I don't really know why. I don't think I've ever had this at anyone's house either. I know my mom's never bought it, but I've seen commercials for it. I've heard about it. I feel like it's a cultural phenomenon. I don't know why. So I bought this one, hamburger helper lasagna. So I'm preparing my hamburger helper now. It actually seems pretty simple. I'm cooking the ground beef, and then it comes with this little sauce packet and then some little noodles, and then you just kind of mix it all together. Yeah. All right. Let's see how it is. I'm done. I made my little hamburger helper. It smells pretty good. I actually don't really know what the consistency is supposed to be like, so I'm only 80% sure that it's done properly, but the noodles are cooked, the meat's cooked, whatever.
I really didn't like it, and I'm really disappointed by it.
I've had my first few bites of hamburger helper. Is it good? No. But is it bad? Also no. It's very bland. Very bland. So I don't know if the makers of hamburger helper are looking at this. It's supposed to be lasagna. Do some more with it.
And the first time I ate it, I was I can see that they formulated this to be as inoffensive to people as possible. It was a lasagna.
Interesting.
Didn't really taste that much of anything except for kind of salt.
Okay, so they're trying to appeal to the masses.
I think so. But then honestly, when I had to reheat it for a second day, I was
You know what? I think if they're targeting families, I think for a lot of kids, they do like really bland food. It's like the whole like just pasta with butter thing. I had a Campbell's instant soup for the first time in my life. I picked up this Campbell's jerk chicken vegetable soup. I'm pretty sure I've literally never had canned soup before. I'll have to fact check that with my mom. I told Layla about this soup that I picked up. I'm pretty sure as a Jamaican, she might have been low-key offended, but hopefully Campbell's is not going to sell you the good name of jerk. Do you guys see the resemblance? Because I don't. Let's taste this, shall we? It's fine. This is like a 5 out of 10. Not to be dramatic, but I can almost feel my blood pressure going up. The salt is out of hand. Kind of just tasted like salt.
That's the thing is that like I know there's I feel like I'm doing this wrong. I know there's so many like delicious foods and I like chose the shitty ones.
Yeah.
So
I think I did it wrong too.
I have not pooped.
There's been a lot of constipation around here.
Yeah, I haven't pooped in 3 days.
So it is, I don't even know what day of this diet, and I am so constipated. Like I actually haven't eaten that much today because like my stomach just feels like ugh. So yeah, I think probably the lack of fiber. My body is not adjusting as well as I wish it would have.
We're getting your coffee after this.
I don't drink coffee, but I'm gonna like down a coffee.
I was chugging coffee. They wasn't enough to... It's literally just been like 2 days of hardly any fruits or vegetables and I'm already constipated. This is gonna be a rough 10 days. I'm literally like chugging coffee and usually that works. It's not enough.
As we say, you have a shit, you have a shit day? Shit poop?
You have a shit poop, you have a shit day.
There we go. Actually, you know what though? You know who was doing the palatability right? The restaurants. McDonald's and their fries, delicious. Had fries one day. McDonald's and their breakfast sandwiches, delicious.
Hello everyone. I haven't been doing that well at the 30% of my calories a day from restaurant food because I'm poor. But today I decided to go for it, so I got myself a little McDonald's breakfast here.
I'm like kind of poor right now, so I've really just been leaning into McDonald's for my eating out.
I have been kind of slacking on the restaurant meals. Yeah. So not gonna lie, I've been completely slacking on the restaurant meals this week. I think I'm just way too cheap for this, but I do have to report back to Layla tomorrow, so I'm on my way to Subway. I don't know if I'm doing the standard American diet thing right. I ended up getting a salad from Subway, but you know what? I've been constipated all damn week. Your girl needs veggies. You know what the problem is? Like I went earlier in the week, I got some bagels, I got some sandwich stuff, like meat and cheese, and I was like, I have to eat it, right? I was like, and that lasts like a bunch of days. Yeah. So I was like, I'm not gonna go spend another $10 on like whatever meal when I have food at home.
Did you have any processed meat like sandwiches?
Yes, I did.
That meat was good.
I made myself, honestly, the most American thing I could think of is a little ham sandwich with some of the little processed meats in it and some lettuce. So I have one vegetable for the day. I was gonna make some oven fries with it as well, but then I was too lazy and too hungry, so this is what I'm eating.
I do quite like a processed ham.
I told you, I had a turkey and cheese sandwich. Yeah. I'm just gonna go pick up some sandwich fixins. I'm thinking some meat, some cheese. Nothing more American than that, right? I don't know if that's true. And I had stabbing stomach pains for
But how was it on the going in?
I love the cheese part of it.
Yeah.
The cheese and bread, I think I enjoyed more than the turkey.
I really like processed ham, I think.
I did enjoy my bagels too.
Yes. Yeah. I got bagels as well, like a little Dempster's bagel this week.
Yeah.
I'm eating my breakfast here, and I decided to do it in the kind of stereotypical American way in front of my laptop, getting some work done. Here's my little Dempster's bagel. Honestly, I have had these quite a few times. Sometimes I just buy them as a little treat because they're nice. They're really good, honestly. So I'm excited to have this. Delicious.
But no, yeah, I don't think I leaned into chips and chocolate and stuff as much.
All right, well, that's our homework. We're getting ice cream and pie after this. I'm so excited. We're going to McDonald's. Honestly, McDonald's R&D team, 10 out of 10 palatability. You rock. Great job, guys.
What are we even talking about right now? Sensory qualities. Yeah, these foods have good sensory qualities.
And this whole team's developing it, which I think is kind of cool, but also like interesting, because also when I was doing research about this, like there's not that much research on this topic. We were talking about it, and it's probably because like all of these R&D teams want to keep these like secrets of like how they get people to really like their food and want to eat more.
First of all, they don't want consumers to know that there's that much effort to manipulate our natural physiology. Plus, yeah, they just wouldn't want all of their like trade secrets like out in the world with their competitors. So there's a lot of like time and resources that these corporations are putting into, for example, when it comes to things like potato chips, when it comes in your mouth, it's crunchy and it makes that sound as you bite into it, and how that activates the reward response and the shape of the salt crystals on the surface of the chip, how that fits into our taste buds and activates that reward response in the most optimal way. We know that there's a lot of time and effort and money put into figuring all that out, but what exactly is that optimum crunch? I think every corporation kind of has their own secret sauce, so to speak, that's not really necessarily widely available. The research that does look into the palatability of food and how it affects food intake is not necessarily looking at it through that specific lens, but it might take a specific product and maybe add a little bit more sugar, add a little bit more salt or fat into it, and then just see how it affects people's food intake.
From the studies that have been done on palatability, we do know that the more palatable a food is, the more that people eat. But what's also interesting is that when people are rating their subjective measures of like how full they are or not, that actually, it doesn't change that. So it's almost like it's overriding our fullness signals to get us to eat more. So when you're only really eating foods, or like 80% of your energy comes from foods that have been modified in this way, that can have a significant impact on how many calories you are actually taking in every day.
I think what's interesting too is because like there can be foods that you genuinely enjoy, but they don't necessarily have that effect. For example, I love fruits, I love apples, but that idea of, oh, I can always have dessert, like that doesn't really extend to those other foods, those whole foods that you might also enjoy.
Honestly, I think as a field, we don't actually even understand that, because, you know, we talk about sweetness. Sweetness promotes a reward. I love mangoes. I love fruit. But like, I think that there's an upper limit of mangoes or fruit I could eat. Whereas if I was eating fuzzy peaches, I could eat the whole entire bag and still go back for more. So there's something about these concoctions that are able to completely override our intrinsic systems that tell us about how to eat and how much to eat.
So the palatability of food, the reason that it can lead to this, you know, we talked about the reward mechanism. It does activate neural pathways that are involved in reward, pleasure, and motivation. And that being said, I mean, I think there are genetic variations, like different people are different. So some people might have even more of a reward response to certain types of foods versus others. Sometimes we look at people that don't struggle with weight and it's almost thought of as like, oh, they just have a lot more discipline or willpower. But I think there could be underlying genetic differences even in terms of how our reward responses are that might just be purely genetic.
When we talk about reward and food, we often talk about like fat content and sugar content and like taste, but what's also really important is texture. And so really processed foods tend to have a different and actually softer or easier to eat texture, which means that we eat them faster. There was a study, they put a group of people in a place where they couldn't leave and fed them all their meals, and their choices of meals were either minimally processed foods for the most part, or mostly a diet that consisted of ultra processed foods. And they found that even though these people were largely doing the same thing, when people were offered ultra processed foods, they tended to have up to 500 calories a day more. The thought process that maybe one of the things that led to this was the increased eating speed, because we know when people eat faster, they tend to eat more.
The second important component of the standard American diet that may lead to overconsumption of calories and possibly weight gain over time is the satiety factor. So satiety is essentially the feeling of fullness that you get after you eat some type of food. Typically, you know, as we eat food, what naturally happens is your body will slowly start producing these hormones that are called satiety hormones. It goes up to your brain and essentially communicates to us, okay, you know, it's starting to get full, we can slow down, we can stop eating. Now, different types of foods have varying levels of that type of effect.
There's actually something called the satiety index. People eat a bunch of different foods and rate how full they feel, basically compare each food to one another.
Generally speaking, we find that foods that are higher in protein, fiber, or water content tend to be the most satiating. Some of the top satiating foods that they found with the highest satiety index was oatmeal, boiled potatoes, oranges, apples, and lingfish.
These foods tend to be not super processed. Something important to note about this is that it's done per 1,000 calories. So it's kind of like standardized to 1,000 calories of something. What makes you feel the most full? Boiled potatoes actually have a very high satiety index, super duper filling. But, you know, potatoes are looked on as like this horrible food that has made us all fat because the way that most of us eat potatoes are in French fries and chips. And something about that change in preparation makes it so that there's so much less satiating.
Protein, fiber, hydration, all things that can contribute to a food being satiating. And you know, a lot of the foods that make up the standard American diet tend to be quite low in that. They tend to be lower in protein, tend to be lower in fiber, not super hydrating. And I felt that.
I felt that so much.
I was very hungry a lot of the time. You know what? Frozen meals, they're small.
Yeah.
It's been only a couple hours since I had my frozen dinner and I am starving. And I feel like I've been really hungry this whole entire week. And it's kind of like annoying to have to make food so often. So I'm gonna have another bagel before dinner.
They're not very substantial. I'm not even sure I see any chicken pieces in here. I'm starting to get kind of skeptical about that 20 grams of protein. I didn't feel like it was anything. Gotta say, even though that frozen meal was quite tasty, it was definitely not that substantial. So I still feel hungry. I'm definitely gonna end up eating something else pretty soon.
I would eat my bagel in the morning and then
Oh my gosh.
I don't feel like it would you know, I wake up sometimes because I'm hungry and then I'll eat my bagel and I'm like, wow, I'm still hungry. And then an hour later, I'm like, oh my God, I need to eat.
Yes. So that tasted good, but to be honest, I feel like it would take me 2 or 3 bagels to actually feel full. I think I'll be fine for maybe another hour.
And also cereal, I don't know, cereal is the least filling food.
I haven't eaten too much today. I think I'm gonna have some cereal just because I should eat something. And cereal is the least filling food in the whole entire world, I've learned. So Rice Krispies, spring edition, because it was on sale. Here I come.
I don't know. I've been hungry all week.
I have been hungry a lot. I feel like I've been living on snack bars this whole week. I'm just so hungry all the time. A lot of my meals were lacking in protein.
Absolutely.
Which I felt.
Which I find so interesting because when you look at the, you know, NHANES data of like what I think it's like what we eat in America is what it's called, looking at what Americans tend to eat, they're not lacking in protein. I feel like when I'm eating this diet, which I think might be a little bit exaggerated to be honest, I'm not getting enough protein. I don't know where I'd be getting protein
I was definitely getting way less protein. A lot of the foods that make up the standard American diet, not only are they lower in protein and lower in fiber, like we mentioned last time, about 15% of people's energy intake are coming from beverages. Foods in liquid form also tend to be less satiating, leaving your stomach pretty quickly. It's not gonna have that much staying power in terms of feeling full.
When you look at diet beverages versus full-fledged sugar-sweetened beverages, they actually have the same satiety impact and it's like pretty low. If you're getting a lot of your calories throughout the day from beverages, it might mean that you eat more to satisfy that hunger. I think a lot of times when people are having these drinks, they're having them kind of on the go and it's not really like thought of like, oh, having this on the go, I'm having this as like a snack because it's like 400 calories or whatever. It's kind of just like, oh, I'm thirsty, let me get a drink on the go. You're not even processing it as like energy, nourishment.
It's similar to like mindful eating. When you eat mindfully, I think people tend to eat less because you're actually kind of paying attention to your hunger and fullness cues. Like I feel like I didn't do the standard American diet properly. But I think what I realized that it is possible, I think, to, even with all of these convenience foods, whether it's like canned or frozen or even restaurant meals, I think it is possible to lean on those foods and still make nutrient dense options. I mean, I do think probably the frozen dinner that I bought was probably more expensive than maybe other options. So I mean, I'm not gonna pretend like it's necessarily accessible for everyone or even the time it takes to like look up and like be able to understand like nutrition labels and stuff. I'm not saying it's necessarily accessible for everyone, but I do think it is possible to.
Yeah, I think it just takes probably a lot more work. And I think also like the food industry does not care. You know, in this video, we really spent a lot of time talking about how like the food itself can drive us to overeat. And that may be one of the things that have led to the increase in obesity that we're seeing. Next week, we're going to talk about kind of the external things that have changed the way that we eat, the way that our households run, our convenience lifestyles, and how that may drive us to eat more, which may have led to the current standard American diet, which may have led to obesity rates rising.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Thanks for watching.